Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are setting the stage for a truly fascinating flashback, taking a deep dive into defining American identity. We're going to look closely at what actually makes up the American identity, examining some incredibly rich historical data alongside groundbreaking sociological research. If you're the kind of person who loves understanding how our past completely wires our present, you are absolutely going to love the journey we've mapped out for you today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. What does it actually mean to be an American today? It's a heavy question, right? We often hear rhetoric that tries to box American identity into one neat little package. But just asking the question immediately challenges those preconceived notions. Are we defined by one singular culture, one specific timeline, or one uniform set of beliefs? Well, the data tells a remarkably different story. And to really understand it, we're going to use some incredible insights from a study by political scientist Deborah J. Schildkraut.
So sociologist Deborah J. Schildkraut approaches this through what she calls the multiple traditions theory. Her research looks at the constitutive norms of American identity, basically the core values, the shared expectations, and those unwritten rules that make us who we are. And her data reveals that we simply cannot be reduced to a single measure of Americanism. Instead, being American is defined by a broad, complex, and sometimes totally contradictory set of these unwritten rules. Our identity isn't just one straight line. It's a massive tapestry woven from countless different threads.
Now, you'll often hear about the concept of a monolithic, single Americanism, the idea of one standard creed that everyone just fits neatly into. But Schildkraut's study explicitly tested this against the reality of a multi-creedal America. Her research looked at whether an increasingly multicultural America naturally engenders a multi-creedal one. And the results? They completely confirm this multiple traditions perspective. But to really grasp why we're so beautifully multi-creedal today, we have to recognize that we've actually been this way since the very beginning.
Let's move along and see how this builds, kind of firing up our historical time machine here. If you think American diversity started in 1776, well, the historical record completely rewrites that narrative. We can trace this all the way back 30,000 years ago, with the crossing of the Beringia land bridge, down to the first farming around 8000 BCE, and all the way to European contact via Norse explorers around 1075 CE. This sprawling timeline proves that a massive multiplicity of cultures and traditions is the absolute original reality of this land.
Let's look a little closer at those earliest days. Following big game like mammoths across an ice-free corridor from Eurasia, the very first humans to settle the Americas were the Paleoindians. And what's amazing is they didn't just stay as one monolithic group. No way. They immediately began forming wildly different societies, adapting, spreading out, and diversifying into literally hundreds of culturally distinct groups. As the Ice Age megafauna went extinct, some groups turned to hunting bison, while others, down in central Mexico, actually began farming around 8000 BCE, a practice that spread like wildfire northward into places like Arizona and New Mexico.
Long before any European flags were planted, complex political and economic organizations were thriving here. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. First, around 600 BCE, the Adena culture began constructing these massive earthwork mounds. Next, they were absorbed by the Hopewell tradition, who pioneered a vast, sophisticated trade network, the Hopewell Exchange System, stretching all the way up to Lake Ontario. Finally, by 500 CE, this evolved into the massive Mississippian culture.
And speaking of that Mississippian culture, I want to hit you with a really surprising fact. 20,000, that is the estimated population of the 12th century Mississippian city of Cahokia, located near modern-day St. Louis. To put that into perspective, centered around a 100-foot-tall earthwork called Monk's Mound, Cahokia was actually larger than the population of London at that exact same time in history. It had a complex class system, and it depended on extensive agriculture and trade.
And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering diversity of lifestyles across the continent. Up in the Pacific Northwest, you had affluent coastal cultures centered around salmon and the gift-giving feasts known as the potlatch. Down in the Southwest, the Anasazi were constructing massive stone and adobe cliff pueblos, literally apartment-like structures built right into cliff faces, like the Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde. And over in the Northeast, the Iroquois were building a highly sophisticated political confederacy. 3 completely different regions, 3 completely distinct and highly advanced ways of life.
Let's zoom in on that Iroquois Confederacy for a moment. It was originally composed of 5 tribes: the Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, Cayuga, and Seneca. Formed in the mid-15th century in present-day upstate New York, they were governed by a representative group of 50 sachem chiefs. Think about that. This early multinational alliance was so politically advanced that it's actually been suggested their culture contributed to later political thinking during the development of the United States government itself.
But we've got to remember, this incredible story isn't just confined to the mainland. Ancient diversity spans oceans. Around 1200 CE, Tahitian explorers settled the Hawaiian Islands, leading to the rise of a rich Hawaiian civilization that remained largely separated from the rest of the world for 600 years. Meanwhile, by the year 1000 CE, Arawak peoples from South America had arrived in Puerto Rico, evolving into the Taino culture, boasting populations of up to 60,000 led by chiefs known as caciques. So the roots of American identity stretch deep into the Pacific and the Caribbean. When we transition to European colonization, the theme of multiplicity continues perfectly. The quote-unquote founding of America by Europeans wasn't a single uniform event, it was a chaotic multicultural scramble. You had Norse explorers mentioning Vinland around 1075 CE. Then came Spanish colonization in Florida and the Southwest, the Dutch settling New Netherland, the French establishing New France, and the English arriving in Jamestown in 1607. These competing powers were literally overlapping in time and space, bringing entirely different languages, religions, and traditions to the continent. To see how these European traditions clashed and blended, we just have to look at the Dutch, Mid-Atlantic, and British expansion. The Dutch had established New Netherland, which actually served as a direct barrier to British expansion coming down from New England. This specific friction led to a series of Anglo-Dutch wars. Eventually, the British took over the Dutch colony in 1664 and renamed it New York. But it shows how early America was fundamentally defined by these colliding and competing traditions.
Then and now, the roots of a multi-creedal society. So the crucial point is how all of this connects back to us today.
All of this deeply diverse history directly informs who we are right now, bringing us right back to Deborah J. Schildkraut's sociological study. We've gone from the ancient Iroquois Confederacy to the Dutch and British clashes, and it all funnels into her modern empirical conclusion. Her finding is incredibly powerful. She writes, most Americans, regardless of their ethnic or immigrant background, share this complex view of the norms that constitute American identity. The data impartially shows that our modern, diverse viewpoints perfectly reflect the deeply diverse, multi-creedal history we just explored. There isn't just one way to be American, and the vast majority of us intuitively understand and embrace that complexity.
Which leaves us with this final thought. If America has always been a tapestry of multiple traditions, from Paleoindian settlements in ancient Mississippian cities to a totally chaotic scramble of European colonists, how does that history shape your own identity today? It's a provocative question, and I really hope this explainer has given you a fresh lens to view your own place within this ancient, ever-evolving narrative. Thank you so much for diving into the data and the history with us today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.